This is day 25 of our European tour, October 2009. We had a bit of a carriage ride from our hotel at Innsbruck up to the district of Rinn, or a little village called Tyrol. This is the company name of the horse and buggy that took us on the ride up to the township of Tyrol.
What's that bite? Yeah, they'll grab you. They'll grab you. Yeah, they grab you. Watch it. They do that. They do that.
Linda took this lovely photograph of the carriage or buggy, and of course the Clydesdale horses. I think they're Clydesdale anyway. And then we got on to the buggy and proceeded with our trip up the mountain to the little township.
Yes,
A couple more days.
No, only a couple of days. I probably wouldn't have went up there.
yeah.
Well, I think if it snows, we won't be able to see the view because we won't be worried then. We won't be frightened. Yeah, maybe. Cable car. Never mind, another cable car.
Beautiful. Best investment I ever made.
What is that?
My polar bear.
I reckon you got your money's worth out of it.
Oh, look. I never use it again. I don't care.
You hang it above your bed as a souvenir. Put it in a frame.
It'll be,
In a frame.
there's somebody will be saying, oh, I'm going such and such. Oh.
So the carriage took us through the outer suburbs of Innsbruck. They're 6 or 8 kilometres up the mountain towards our destination, and it was a nice quiet run sitting in the back of the horse and carriage. So a bit of a history. Rinn is the municipality of the area and just outside of Innsbruck in the state of Tyrol. I'll call it Tyrol. And we headed for the village of Rinn, where we were going to visit an old church. The township was first mentioned in 1250 or thereabouts in old documents, so it has a bit of a medieval history. And we went wandering through these little laneways and took some photographs of the nice green pastures with the cows.
So it is.
Oh, look at the bells on there. Oh, yeah. Oh, they'll never get down.
Gee, just imagine you had hundreds of
I
them.
don't know what's down
That's why they don't lose them, isn't it? In the mountains.
So, yeah.
Yes, that is basically what it is. They bring the people in summer up in the
Look after the sun.
He sleeps all day.
Plays poker all night.
He has a wonderful life. He loves it.
She might have the excuse to be a house mum yet.
Even an allowance of $500 a week.
Yeah, hell no, you're in, Sue.
It makes sense. Always makes sense.
Then we stopped at this old house, and I can't remember much about it, but there was a bit of a history, and there was a plaque on the wall in German, I presume, that told a bit of a story. And the story was about Andre von Rinn, 1459 to 1462, and later on we'll talk about a series of murders that happened in and around that area. I'm always amazed about the ingenuity and the wonderful buildings that man can actually make. and live in that suit the environment they're living in. So here are some stories in picture form about some children that were murdered by a cult run by the man Andre von Rinn. It also amazes me how faith in God can be changed to a man-made religion that turns into a man-made cult that can do these sort of things. I think this was an image of a cross on the door. There were some lovely flowers outside the building, and my wife took a number of shots of them, and the colours just are brilliant. So we got back on the buggy, and the horse drove us further up the mountain, and we passed all these farmlands and villages and little houses, and it was green and lush and quite beautiful. And the buggy pulled us up outside the church of the Visitation of Virgin Mary in the township, and here's on one side of the road was this hotel or restaurant, and on the other side of the road was the old church.
Where's the cat?
Depends on where they're from.
My wife is deaf, and she's telling a story about today is Sunday, and we visited this place, and she points it out on the map and doesn't know the area, the name of the area, and we came from our hotel, which we're going to spend the night in, and she spells it wrong. It's Innsbruck, and this is the mountains, and it's cold weather coming soon, and the snow skiing next week, next Thursday. There's prediction of the start of the snow season, and we will be missing out on it. So here is an image or two of the old Rinn church, and a bit of story behind it. This church was that a young boy who was born in 1459 was murdered in 3 years later by so-called non-local Jews, which has since been debunked, but at the time it became a pilgrimage church, and people would go up to this Judastine church and visit it. A doctor in the area in 1620 wrote a book claiming that there was a murder of a child, and the book was published, and that's where this pilgrimage and myth comes from. His manuscript was, now this boy who was 3 years old was called Andre von Rinn, and he was sold by his greedy grandfather to allegedly some Jews. Now this book was turned into a drama or a play, and it played out all the myth of this murder of the boys by the Jews on a stone which is now in the church and on display. Here it is here. So this stone has been given the name of Stone by the Jews, and this tells a story in the German language. I think it's German, which I couldn't read, and it's right above this alleged stone that the boy was killed on in a church. Amazing. There was also a bit of a photo gallery that I didn't really look at. So here's the church from the outside, and on the other side of the road was this building with lovely flowers and balconies. And it was, while the people were still mucking around gathering together, there was some that took selfies of the coach driver or the buggy driver, and here are some of those photographs. You can pause this and read a bit of the story about the murder of this child. So then we got back on the buggy and we headed back down the mountains through some lovely side ways and alleys and side roads in the forest area, and I took some images of the bush land. So then we got back to the hotel in Innsbruck called Bon Alfina, and here's an image of that hotel from the outside. And it was late in the afternoon, so it was getting a little bit dark, and this is a photograph of the reception area of the hotel. Very old. It was an extremely interesting building. And this room was fairly small, and as you can see, hardly any room to move. And I actually stood in the corner just to show how small the room was for a big bloke like me, and how I had to walk sideways to get into the bathroom. So in saying that, I can definitely say that it was one of the most comfortable sleeps I've had for a while. On that tour. The worst hotel was a dog box in Paris, and that was very, very uncomfortable, and even smaller than this room in this hotel. So here's an example of me relaxing with a remote control and this really old TV. And these days we're spoilt with our electronics, but at least it had a remote control. Here's some image of the dusk outside the hotel window before we went downstairs for dinner. I didn't take these photographs, but it just shows you how we spent the evening relaxing after dinner with a coffee and sit back and enjoy the fellowship of other people. These people made a real effort to welcome and Linda, because she is deaf, and it was a bit hard for them to communicate with her. And here's Chris and his newly married wife, and another bloke called Chris from Western Australia, who was a farmer. And of course there was a lot of other people in the tour group, and here's a photograph of the tour director, Philippe Matthews, and myself and my wife. Notice she's wearing a rather nice woolly coat because it was cold. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of day 25, our European tour, October 2009. We went on a horse and buggy ride to the little township of Rinn in Austria.